if she's still not improving, then I'd want to call for help, maybe anesthetics or ITU.
Okay. Let's say the lady's seizures have been controlled and she's staying in one of the medical wards overnight. You're handing over this patient to the night team. Please talk me through your handover to the other night SHO.
Okay, so this is a 25-year-old lady who's presented following an episode of seizure. She had a further tonic-clonic seizure in the ED in the ward. She has a known history of depression, anxiety, and self-harm.
And so this is a question all about your approach to how one might manage a patient and investigate someone who's had seizures, which is a very common presenting complaint. And secondly, it also tested how you actually manage a patient having a seizure in front of you in hospital. So there are two different facets to this. And I think it's really important to take those 30 seconds before the scenario starts to think about the vignette. It's very clear there are a few pertinent things here. This is a young lady who's got a history of anxiety and depression, who's had a seizure, and is now still a bit post-ictal. So what I would be doing before the station is thinking about words to write down. So simple ones like post-ictal, status epilepticus, seizure activity, and knowing a good structure of how I might approach seizure activity, I think, is very important here, especially in terms of taking a history and then to examination.
So first of all, I looked at the IMT scoring application and I tried to prepare in advance and tried to get anything possible to score points. And I think the thing to note is that most people do get an interview. So obviously don't panic if you don't have all the points, but whatever possible, try and prepare early, try and get the full QIP cycles, even if it's just a simple VTE audit or something. It's very easy to get full marks for that. And then I spoke to lots of different IMTs who'd already applied and sort of asked them to send me their white space questions and see the kind of thing that they'd be looking for. And then I tried to give examples wherever possible. And I think I even wrote stuff that I was working towards. For example, I wrote that was doing a PG cert, I was undertaking a PG cert, but hadn't yet completed it. And I think even if you've not completed it, it's still good to write those things to show that you're keen.
Yeah, okay, that's very, very useful. And then your interviews kind of come quite quickly after the white space, especially after Christmas. So how did you prepare for those?
So the optimize resources were really helpful. So I tried to watch, there's a lot of videos, but I tried to watch all of them, particularly focusing on the clinical and ethical scenarios, and then trying to apply for the personal section examples, making sure I had an example for each question that they could ask, and practicing with colleagues, all different types of colleagues, is really important. So you practice with friends, but also practice with other people that you feel less comfortable with to get more of an idea of what it will be like on the day.
Yeah, okay, nice. And then so the actual interview itself then, so just maybe we'll go through stations, just station by station. So your portfolio station, which is the one you start with.
Issues, but it is a tricky topic, and it does come up quite often for, I suppose, a registrar or SHO managing the wards at night.
No, excellent. To be honest, those are some of the most tricky things, and I think, to be honest, if you're ignorant to the idea of sedating someone, it's not a problem to you. But when you're aware that what you're doing is actually depriving someone's liberty and actually medically sedating them, which can be quite a traumatic thing if they're not delirious, it's quite a big thing, and it's classed as assault, really, isn't it? Because you're sort of, you're restricting someone and restraining them against their will. But So I've had a few scenarios where I've had to do that, and purely for patient and other people's safety, and it's quite a tricky thing to do. But actually, doing a dose is quite important in that situation, and it's called obviously the deprivation of liberty and safeguards, and it's done with but you have to obviously assess the patient capacity and understand that the patient does not have capacity, and whatever their actions are at the moment are not in their best interest. So you might need to think about talking to next of kin to make sure that they are understanding, and to see whether they can give you a background, to make sure that this is out of line with their usual behavior. And the second thing is, actually in this situation, you might need to actually consider getting an IMCA in, not obviously to put someone under a dose, but as a safeguard against inappropriate medical care. Sometimes you have to consider having, if there's no next of kin, then you might have to have someone representing the patient. So an IMCA is a independent mental capacity advocate for the patient, who essentially acts on the patient's best interest, and will essentially, that person, you can reason, the purpose of their attendance to a meeting with you is to say, look, this patient has an infection.